Alright, so we have these characters from Blender Foundation. The female character here is Rain, while the male character is Snow. So in this video, we're going to be animating these characters with animations from ActorCore. Now to get the animation, I'll expand the Animixer tab, click Get, and then click Get ActorCore. This opens up my browser to the ActorCore page. Now in the categories here, I'll click Combat and then select Hit and Dodge. Alright, so when I scroll down, you'll notice some of the preview have two characters. One is grayed out. So what this means is the animations are appeared, and you can also tell from the naming. Here you can see the prefix W03 jump kick, and we also have the same prefix here, W03 punch block. So you can tell from the prefixes if the animations appeared. Now let's return to Blender. Now to import the animation, I'll select import motion, click FBX motion, and then look at the file from this folder. So I'm going to import this first animation. I'll click import FBX. With the armature loaded, I'll select the female rig and then click bind. Now let's quickly preview the animation. Alright, that's what the animation looks like. So now I'll go ahead and bake the animation by clicking bake button here and then OK. Wait for that to process. Okay, so again, I'll import the second animation, select that and import FBX. With the male character as active, I'll click bind. Let's preview the animation. And then simply click bake and then OK. Both animations are 377 frames. Okay, let's return to frame 1 and preview the animation again. Now you can see both characters are being animated, but they're still not interacting with each other. We'll need to have them face each other. I could do that by pressing R and Z to lock on the Z axis, but we're not going to be using that. What I'll do instead is I'm going to start with this character, so I'll select that and then expand the adjustments tab here and then click this rotate button. So now when I move the mouse, you can see it rotates the character. You also want to pay attention to the value here. So we're going to make this 90 degrees by entering 90 and then press enter and give it some time to process. Okay, I'll select the other character now, click rotate, press 90 minus to rotate the other way and then enter and wait for that to process. Alright, so now we have the characters facing each other, but they are too far apart, so we're going to have to bring them closer together. So now I'll press 7 to go to up view. The next thing I'll do is find the frame where the female character jabs the male character with her knee. So let's go to side view and then scroll through the timeline. Okay, this is the frame I was referring to. So now we just need to move the character so that the female's knee makes contact with the male character's stomach. I'll press 7 again to go to up view and then select the female rig. So now when I click the position button and move the mouse around, you can see the character's movement corresponds to the movement of the mouse. Now using the position button, I'll move the female character closer to the male. Let's switch to wireframe mode and then zoom in a bit closer. So now click the position button again and then move this forward to about this point. Alright, I will return to solid view, then go to side view to look at the results. I think this looks okay. I can again click the position button and press Y to lock on the Y axis. Let's make little adjustments along that axis. Alright, let's preview the animation again. Of course, return to frame 1. You can see the animation looks much better compared to what we started with. Alright, now I'll return to frame 1 and then go to side view, then play the animation. Looking at the feet, you'll notice they keep sinking below the floor on several frames. Here too, you can see the male character sinks below the floor level. To fix this sinking issue, I will start with the female character. Now in the adjustments tab, I'll click to floor button. In this menu, I'll have the frame range from the very beginning to the end of the animation. For the floor level, I'll leave it set to rig, which is going to use the lowest point of the rig, and that is the area around the toe here. And for the bone option, I'll leave that as toes, since that is the character's lowest point. and then I'll go ahead and click OK. Alright, so with that done, returning to frame 1 and playing the animation, you can see the feet are no longer syncing. So that's the power of the to floor button. Alright, so now let's also solve the syncing issue for the male character. But this time we're not going to run the operation for the whole length of the animation. You'll notice there's a frame where the male character starts to lift up from the ground, which is around here, frame 150. Now let's return to frame 1 where the character appears to be on the floor. Zooming in on this foot, you can see it's slightly below the floor level. So I'll click the position button and press Z to lock on the Z axis and then nudge it upward. So now with the male character properly on the floor, I'm going to click the to floor button and then have the frame range start from 1 to frame 151 as the end frame. I'll leave the other options as they are and then click OK. Now returning to frame 1 and playing the animation, we can see the syncing issue has also been solved for the male character. Okay, and here's the moment she starts lifting him up and then smashes him to the ground. Now let's fix the male character going below the ground level. I'm just going to find a good frame where the character is above the ground. I think I'll go with this frame and then click to floor, set the start frame to the current frame and the end to the last frame of the animation. This time around for the bone option, I'm not going to use the toes because the toes are currently too high above the ground and we don't want to use that. So I'm going to change this bone option to the lowest bone. That way it uses the lowest bone closest to the floor instead of using the toes. So now with that, I'll go ahead and click OK. Alright, so now when we preview the animation, we should see that it tries to maintain the character to stay above the ground level. The animation is not perfect, you can see some undulating motion. Let's preview that again. Alright, so around this frame you'll notice an up and down movement of the torso bone. So let's fix that. Now I'll just find a frame where the torso sits on the ground level. Okay, I think I'll work with this frame. So now I'll go to pose mode and select the torso. Now in the Kinematics tab, we have this hold button, and at the top of the Kinematics tab, we have these fields for specifying the frame range when working with the buttons down here. So now I'll click this button to insert the current frame and make the end field the last, and then click hold. And in this menu, I'll disable rotation. And here you can see it says holding location keyframe for torso. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Alright, now when we go back few frames and play the animation, you'll notice the torso bone no longer undulates since we've held the location from frame 219 to the end of the animation. Okay, so let's play the animation again from the beginning. Alright, so you can see the animation looks much better than we started with. So let's continue. Alright, so now when we return to the beginning of the animation and zoom in closer to the face of the female character, you'll notice her hand is poking through the lower jaw. So I'll return to object mode and select this rig. Now to fix this poking issue, I'll go to the adjustments tab. Under this bones option, I'll select, let's start with the shoulder. And then I'll click tilt to adjust the shoulder on the Z axis. You can see, I think that's okay. Maybe I'll also make adjustment on the X axis and tilt like this. I'll return to the bone option and select the arm lower, then press tilt to move it out of the jaw. I don't like this inward bending of the torso, so I'm going to straighten her pose. So in the bone option, I'll select chest lower and then tilt that. Okay, so let's preview what we've done so far. Okay, she dodges, then jab him in the stomach, then throws a hook. Okay, so on this frame, I'm going to make her hand reach a bit higher, closer to the jaw. So in the bones option, I'll select arm upper and then click tilt raise it slightly up. Okay, this is better. All right, now let's look at the animation from the beginning. Let's return to frame 1 and play the animation. Okay, so this is as much as I can cover in this video. There are still few things we can improve in this animation, like fixing the hand placement, removing the foot sliding, and also refining the part where the female character lifts the male character. After all that, we can add anticipation in some of the frames and exaggerate the motion in some frames as well. So those are some of the things we can work on, but I will be covering them gradually in separate videos, as I will now focus more time on growing this channel while still building and improving tools that makes Blender easy for everyone. So if there's any animation issue you want me to cover, or any feature you would love to see added to Rig-GNS or any of my tools, please leave it in the comments below. So that is it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.